Good evening, everyone. My name is Betsy Caporale, and I am your facilitator for this evening's webinar. Tonight's program is brought to you by the United States Society for AAC, or USAC, the voice of AAC. Thank you to the U.S. AAC Education Committee and to the International Society of AAC for making this happen. We have over 100 people from all over the world registered for tonight's presentation, and we are especially pleased to have Stephanie as our guest speaker this evening as we celebrate AAC Awareness Month. This webinar is provided free of charge by USSAAC. We strongly encourage you to visit our website and consider joining USSAAC. And our new membership year begins in January of 2021. A quick disclosure, I have no financial or non-financial relationships to disclose relevant to the content of this webinar. A few logistics. Your microphone will be muted throughout the webinar. As Stephanie is presenting, please type any questions you might have for her in the box at the lower right-hand corner, and I will relay the questions to Stephanie. Questions will be answered as time allows at the end of the webinar. We may group similar questions together as one question. Please pose your questions in a general fashion rather than relating to a specific individual. Questions that cannot be answered during the webinar during time constraints will be forwarded to the presenter so she can answer them later via email. Continuing education, ASHA CEU participation form and certificate of attendance can be found at the email address shown on this slide. Registrants will receive a follow-up email providing the link to the archive, CEU, and instructions, but you must stay for the entire length of the webinar to receive credit. Our webinar platform does allow us to see who is on and for how long. Directions for submitting the completed participation form are also on the ISAC website. You have until 2 weeks after the webinar to submit for CEUs. Now I'd like to introduce you to our presenter, Stephanie Faso. She earned her bachelor's degree in communication studies with honors and is now earning her master's degree in communication studies, both at San Jose State. As a lifelong AAC communicator, she has shared her insights and experiences regarding AAC in graduate seminars and also presents on the national level. In addition, she helps support children, teenagers, and young adults who use AAC and instructs courses on ableism. Over the past several years, Stephanie has graciously volunteered to be a guest speaker in several of my AAC trainings, so I can tell you from personal experience that you are in for a very special treat this evening. Learning objectives for this evening are the communication perspective and experience of a person who communicates through AAC, the significance of being mindful to the cultural attitudes towards people with AAC needs, various methods of empowering individuals with AAC needs to have autonomy, independence, and a healthy sense of life. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Stephanie.
I would like to introduce myself. I'm Stephanie Faso, and I am earning my master's degree at San Jose State in Communication Studies, specializing in the cultural communication of people with significant physical and speech differing abilities, and their autonomy, independence, and sense of self. If I were to ask anyone that I know about myself, they'd probably say that I enjoy initiating and engaging in all types of conversations. During this webinar, I will discuss cultural attitudes toward people with AAC needs, insights on how the support systems empower and disempower those individuals, and I will give an overview of strategies that support systems can use to empower individuals with AAC needs. First, I would like to discuss my medical history. What I have is called Level 5 quadriplegic dyskinetic, both athetoid and dystonic, cerebral palsy. Athetoid cerebral palsy is defined as having mixed muscle tone, having the limited ability to sit in an upright position without proper support, having minimal balance, and having involuntary muscular movements. Whereas, dystonic cerebral palsy is having repetitive and prolonged movements, pain from muscular movements, pronounced movements when there are high emotions, and having a need to brace the limbs to try to stabilize the involuntary movements. Since my cerebral palsy is complex, I have moderate to minimal gross, fine, facial, and oral motor abilities. Cerebral palsy, however, has possible issues that accompany the diagnosis, such as intellectual limitations, learning difficulties, vision and/or hearing differences, verbal limitations, seizures, digestive issues, anxiety and/or depression, lack of bladder and/or bowel control, and sleeping challenges. Obviously, I do not have all of those issues, but I have experienced many of them. But I have many more abilities than disabilities, definitely. I recognize that I have complex support needs. I will not let it define me, as I do not identify myself as disabled, even though our culture assigned and imposed the identity of being disabled on me. I don't see myself as disabled in all realms of life, as I see myself as a typical millennial in my educational life, professional life, love life, personal life, and spiritual life. I only identify myself as being Stephanie Faso. I cannot be anyone else, except for being myself. The reason that I do not view myself as disabled is, I am more able than disabled, since the support from my family, wheelchair, AAC device, and people in my life have completely empowered my abilities, rather than disempowered them. I have never wished that I didn't have cerebral palsy, since it's one of the wonderful millions of pieces that make up who I am. I love, value, and accept who I am, as I am very thankful and humble for all the abilities that I actually do have. In spite that I have no issue with having this disability, we know that our culture is a different story. Our culture views those with differing abilities as special, atypical, not able, special needs, and exceptional. Those labels reinforce, recreate, and reconstruct the exclusion of individuals with differing abilities from the hegemonic culture. These individuals with differing abilities have so many abilities. They have to use accessible technologies and equipment for each individual's abilities, in order to access and eventually empower those abilities that they actually do have. So, people with differing abilities are able, but they need to have different, alternative ways of accessing those abilities. Therefore, those with differing abilities do not have special needs, nor are they any more special, exceptional, nor atypical than people without differing abilities, because no human is more special or typical than anyone else, especially in our culture that supports and encourages diversity. So, it frustrates me whenever people think of me as just a wheelchair talker girl, rather than seeing me as a young lady who has many characteristics, who just so happens to use a supportive wheelchair full-time and just needs to communicate differently from most people. Seems like people in society judge me for my disability, but I view my disability as a part of my life, among many other things. Speaking of our culture and society, I would love to discuss ableism and what ableism means in our everyday culture. Ableism can be described as the oppression against people with differing abilities. It can be discrimination, prejudice, and prejudgments toward people who have differing abilities because the social location of disabled individuals is not in the privileged group. Ableism is similar to other oppressions, such as racism, sexism, ageism, and homophobia, where ableism has differing avenues to be expressed. The avenues would be considered ideas, expectations, overgeneralizations, attitudes, practices, environmental barriers, like inaccessibility, microaggressions, and/or behavior. Ableism can be bold or subtle, intentional or unintentional, and indirect or direct. Ableism can be bold, such as the AAC communicators' support systems take their AAC devices away for no apparent reason, while ableism can be expressed in a subtle way, such as families who have children with disabilities tend to refer to them as special needs. This microaggression of the term special needs can be considered as oppressing children with disabilities by considering them as special, which reinforces the notion that our culture sees children with disabilities differently. My only special need is having access to coffee all day. What I noted is that there is a binary of expectations toward people with disabilities. The way this binary of expectations relates to people who have differing abilities is black and white thinking, which this error of thinking within our culture divides people from the disabled community and the hegemonic culture. The culture scribes, assigns, reinforces, and expects those with differing abilities to become either special and inspirational, or being dependent, disadvantaged, and less than the hegemonic culture. This binary of expectations does not allow the culture to see people who have disabilities as just people. The power of people without disabilities gives permission and the right to scribe, set, and reinforce the expectations toward people who have differing abilities. Therefore, every time people refer to me as special or inspirational, those labels are imposed on me without my consent, making me feel that I should be different from people without differing abilities, implicating that I should be different from those without my kind of differing abilities covertly segregates me, as someone with diverse support needs, from the general public, who do not have any support needs. When I was in my early 20s, I felt that I am different from everybody else without differing abilities, and even I considered and believed that I had been removed from the hegemonic culture. I felt a significant amount of pressure from the culture and even myself to be perfect, in order to measure up to the cultural expectations of me being special and inspirational. Using those labels, I remember I imposed the cultural expectation of being an innocent, wholesome person onto myself. But we all know everyone is not 100% innocent, and I am no exception, even though there is a cultural expectation of people who have complex differing abilities cannot do anything wrong. So, since I am not that different from everyone else, I used to resist the labels, such as special and inspirational, by deciding to do self-destructive actions. I chose an impulsive action after an impulsive action, which led me to develop an addiction. My self-destructive choices of course impacted my classes, and eventually affected my grades. Now as I am thinking about it, my self-destructive choices tried to fix the pain from the cultural expectations of me being less than. Then I decided to sabotage by doing impulsive things, as an act of resisting the labels of special and inspirational. Although I wanted to fight against those labels in the past, I accepted myself now as another person who lives their life and wants to impact the world. I just want to leave a mark on this world, like my peers. Therefore, I am leaving a mark, viewing these types of encounters of people expecting me to be special or inspirational, as an opportunity for me to educate them that I am not dramatically different from everybody else. Sometimes I feel like I am a broken record, as I always tell people that I just have a wheelchair, have a speech device to communicate on, and need support with my personal care needs. That's all. It is not that complicated. The avenues of ableism, such as using labels that describes those who have differing abilities, reinforce, recreate, and reconstruct the force from people without disabilities to divide and exclude those who have disabilities from institutions, societal sectors, and society at large, just like what those labels do. It is not just macro-societal structures, but ableism reinforces, recreates, and reconstructs within micro-societal structures, such as family, friendships, marriages, and acquaintances. Those micro-societal structures that are created, recreated, and reinforced are so embedded within our everyday happenings, which helps ableism remain ingrained in the mentality of these individuals who have differing abilities, especially those with significant differing abilities, such as people who have complex physical and communicative differing abilities. The other extreme expectations toward people who have disabilities generally are lowered, less important, and less valued than the overall societal expectations for those without disabilities, which derived from ableism. Ableism develops the societal structure for people without disabilities to become and maintain more privilege for those who have disabilities. Therefore, people with disabilities set lower expectations for themselves because they believe they are less. These expectations would be anywhere from people who have disabilities should be less educated, to less knowledgeable, to less emotionally mature, to less valued, to less mentally independent, to less important than their non-disabled counterparts. Internalized ableism is directly related to ableism, which implies that people who have disabilities believe the products of ableism are true. Those with differing abilities become less, since they believe the aspects of ableism are accurate. It is likely these individuals who experience internalized ableism do not embrace their identity of having differing abilities. They rather focus on what they are not able to do. A common phenomena of ableism, based on having expectations of being less, is an expectation that conveys those with significant differing abilities should be less mature. What happens usually is people with differing abilities internalize the statement that they are less mature, so adults with differing abilities don't respect themselves as adults, which not respecting themselves as adults reinforces the statement of they are less mature. It is quite frustrating. It is an opportunity to have patience for people. Another example of when people think of me as less is they act surprised when they figure out that I am able to program speech devices. Once, I was programming a student's speech device when I was working in a classroom of students who have complex physical and communicative differing abilities. A visiting occupational therapist there who I have known acted beyond surprise that I was able to program a student's speech device. She even took a handful of pictures of me programming it. When I asked her how come she is taking pictures, she told me that she hasn't seen anyone with my type of abilities programming a speech device. I was thinking, I am a more than able lady. Why would she expect any different from me? I understand her expectation of me being less abled and less competent in programming the speech device derived from ableism, since ableism creates and reinforces expectations of those differing abilities being less. Since I spoke about my cerebral palsy and ableism, I'll now discuss my work as a graduate student on how the support systems influence the autonomy, independence, and sense of self of those who have significant mobility and communicative differences. I am going to share the quick overview on my insights on the AAC field and my findings from my research. Having independence with communicating through their AAC systems means that their communication partners do not have to speak for them, and they're able to communicate through their AAC system without any support from anyone. Similarly, a person needs to have autonomy to communicate in order to live their own life fully, by communicating through their AAC systems in decision-making without letting anyone dominating the decision-making for them. Even though there are many strengths in the AAC field, the field has some limitations. One of the field limitations that I've noted is many people who support those with significant physical differing abilities who communicate through AAC focus on independence more than autonomy. I, however, would like to make the argument that autonomy is as important, or even more important than independence. The reason is having an internalized desire to have the ability of governing one's own self can influence having an internalized motivation of achieving independence with communicating through AAC systems. That can empower them to have a healthy and strong sense of self. Of course, they are able to communicate their autonomy completely on their AAC systems if they have independence. Having an internalized desire to govern one's own self can lead to wanting to communicate independently. In order to have a strong sense of self, autonomy and independence of communicating through their AAC systems need to be developed first. Many people with physical differing abilities who communicate through AAC need to have support systems, who are professionals and families, support their daily living, medical, educational, and communicative needs. Even though the support system is for supporting these individuals with complex needs, many times these differing abled individuals' autonomy can be limited by their support systems. For example, I've observed time and time again that some people who I've encountered might be independent with communicating on their devices, but the support system have the privilege to control when the AAC communicators have their AAC systems with them. It is common for the support systems to influence the AAC communicators' autonomy and independence by taking the communicators' AAC systems off when they are not expected to communicate. Whenever the support systems have control over the communicators' AAC systems, by determining when the AAC communicators should have and should not have their AAC systems with them at any point or time, it robs their autonomy. The support systems are a part of the privileged group, so they unfortunately are in the position to dictate when the individuals with these differing abilities can have and cannot have their own voice. It reinforces, recreates, and reconstructs the oppression of people who have these types of differing abilities. So, unfortunately, the AAC communicators are being disempowered from the support systems, which it allows the support systems to have the privilege over the AAC communicators' voice. Literally, the privileged group silences the oppressed group in this case, just by not putting the communicators' AAC systems on all day, every day. There is no valid reason for anyone to not have their AAC systems with them all day, every day, even when they are in the bathroom and on the bus. It is time for us to hold the same expectations for those with AAC needs as we do with people who are able to communicate verbally, by letting those who communicate through AAC to have their own voice all day, every day, in order to live their independent and autonomous life. Also, I believe that we need to frame our thinking from AAC is for using to AAC is for communicating. The AAC field, however, refers to those who communicate through AAC as AAC users. I feel that the term of AAC users reinforces and recreates the notion that AAC is just for using, rather than for communicating. For those with minimal verbal abilities, communicating through AAC is just a way to communicate. We don't refer to people who communicate in Spanish as Spanish users, or we don't say sign language users when we refer those who communicate through sign. So, shouldn't we hold the same expectations for referring to those who communicate through AAC by not referring to them as users? Therefore, we need to shift our focus from seeing just disabilities to concentrating on empowering abilities, such as we will need to frame our thinking of how the individuals are able to communicate, rather than seeing individuals with AAC needs as just nonverbal. It is all about empowering those with AAC needs to communicate autonomously and independently, rather than disempowering. The AAC field needs to expand their focus beyond the foundation of AAC from the clinical and educational standpoints, by including the AAC communicators' actual communication, such as the autonomy and independence with communication for AAC communicators. Next, I will discuss my findings a little more in depth. According to Hergenrother and Rhodes, there is a power imbalance between those with these differing abilities, who are a part of the oppressed groups, and the support systems, as the support systems are a part of the privileged group in the cultural structure. So far, I concluded 4 themes of the support systems who disempower these individuals who have complex physical and communicative differing abilities, and only 1 theme, the solution of the support systems is how to empower them. The 4 common themes of the support systems disempowering individuals with these differing abilities with their autonomy and independence include not having enough knowledge about the details of the communication devices, being unwilling to work with individuals to communicate on the devices, denying the significance of having an access to individuals' potential abilities with the devices, and the support systems working with the individuals, but the support systems usually take too much credit for individuals' autonomy and independence. The only one common theme, which can be the best optimal outcome of how the support systems empower these individuals, is that they work with individuals but let those with these differing abilities take responsibility to express their autonomy and independence. Now I am going to discuss each pitfall in depth, so you can have an opportunity to empower, encourage, and support those who have AAC needs. The first four themes that imply the support systems who disempower those with significant mobility and communicative differences are pitfalls, while the fifth recurring theme is considered as the solution as it is the best optimal outcome. Let's view the four pitfalls are on one side of the coin, whereas the solution is on the other side of the same coin. We all have a choice to pick which side of the coin to enact. Every time we interact with the AAC communicators and talk and think about them, it is our own individual decision whether to empower those who have AAC needs or to disempower AAC communicators. I am going to discuss the coin next. The first pitfall is that many support systems have a limited knowledge of how to support their communicative abilities with the devices. Unfortunately, there would be a minimal amount of opportunities for them to express their autonomy and independence on their communication devices when the support systems are less than knowledgeable about how to support their communicative abilities. One example is when I was in kindergarten, I was assigned to a different speech-language pathologist, who unfortunately decided to switch me from Liberator to Dynavox, without completing the full set of AAC evaluations. Her reasoning behind switching from Liberator to Dynavox was that she was more comfortable with Dynavox's language. Throughout the years, I've noted that many AAC professionals fall into the pitfall of fearing the decision-making of which AAC systems their clients should have. They tend to consider their own comfort level over their client's actual communicative abilities. As that speech-language pathologist fell into that pitfall of changing my AAC device since she was more comfortable with Dynavox, so my communicative abilities decreased significantly. Since Dynavox has a different language, the language was slower and more frustrating for me to express myself than with my Liberator. My speech-language pathologist did not teach nor encourage me how to communicate on my Dynavox, as well as my variety of different alternative communication systems, such as my body language, sign language, and a spelling and communication board that mounted on my wheelchair tray. Although those are fabulous communication systems, they were not 100% appropriate for me, since they did not meet my communicative and intellectual needs at all. Because I was not able to communicate competently, I could not express my intellectual abilities, so, unfortunately, the school systems, medical systems, and some of my family members assigned and imposed their assumptions of me having significant intellectual impairments, without getting to know me intensely. My mom called meeting after meeting with the speech-language pathologist, where she expressed the issues of my inappropriate AAC systems, but unfortunately my speech-language pathologist discarded my mom's concerns, even when we had advocates attend. I had to rely on communicating through my Dynavox and communication board until 4th grade. Since I was assigned to a different speech therapist who was less than knowledgeable in the advanced communication devices, I had a less advanced communication device with a different language without considering my communicative needs. My independence of communicating decreased, all because she did not have enough knowledge of a communication device that has more advanced vocabulary. In Vamis and Watson's research, they detail a dichotomy of those with differing abilities and people without, as people without differing abilities have more power over individuals with differing abilities. Similarly, my autonomy and independence were compromised, because my support systems gave me a communication device with a less advanced program that I was not familiar with since there is that dichotomy. So, I had no choice but to be content with letting others guess what my decisions and thoughts were and speak for me. I was thrown in codependent relationships with my communicative partners, as I learned how to depend on someone else whenever I want to communicate. letting my communicative partners enable and reinforce the power imbalance between the support systems and me, which taught me at a young age that I have to rely on my support systems to communicate, since they are able to speak verbally. The limited knowledge of how to support people on their communication devices decreases their autonomy and independence, like what happened to me. The second pitfall is the support systems have unwillingness to work to support individuals' communication. Manasseh's article discussed that there is a misconception that those with these differing abilities are people's and societal burdens and problems. Because of this misconception, there are a significant number of support systems who intentionally or unintentionally are not willing to invest the time, energy, and work to support individuals with the communicative abilities, which can come across as apathetic and complacent toward helping with individuals' communicative abilities. The support system's apathetic state can be expressed in many ways, such as many of my cohorts' support systems do not bring these individuals' communication devices everywhere they go. Those support systems, reasons behind why those individuals' AAC systems are not with them are many, such as putting the AAC systems with them is too much work. Without having their own voice, they cannot govern themselves, such as participating in decision-making efficiently. Limited access to AAC system are not able to allow these individuals to have as much independence as possible. O'Keefe, Kozik, and Schuler explained those with differing abilities are at risk to internalize the support systems' attitudes. Not putting their AAC systems on enables and reinforces the misconception of those with significant physical differing abilities who communicate through AAC systems are a burden, as allowing these individuals have the access to AAC system is too burdensome. However, these individuals trying to communicate without their AAC systems is so difficult, too much work to be communicative toward others, and even burdensome to them. So, the support systems transfer their burdens of communicative needs to these individuals. Therefore, the burden of their communicative needs keeps uncycling between the support systems and them. The support systems' unwillingness to work on these individuals' communicative needs can be heightened when the support systems and these individuals are enmeshed, which being enmeshed is common between the support systems and people who have significant differing abilities. Likewise, I noted that the support systems' unwillingness to work with individuals with their communication devices can transfer onto the individuals, so these individuals become apathetic toward communicating autonomously and independently, which is called internalized ableism. The third pitfall of how the support systems influence autonomy and independence of those with significant mobility and communicative differences is denying AAC communicators intellectual abilities. I noted that the support systems, whether it is a professional or a family member, frequently deny that individuals have the intellectual potential to communicate on communication devices. There is a history of people who have complex physical and communicative differing abilities were seen as less than smart, which is embedded in the culture and language, such as the word dumb, used to describe people with AAC needs, since a misconception of those who have complex communicative needs were considered as quote dumb. Sloan discussed that there is a cultural misconception that those with differing abilities, even those who do not need cognitive support, are less than intellectual, which this misconception can be exacerbated for those with these complex physical and communicative differing abilities. When I was a young child, many people denied that I had the intellect to be able to communicate on a communication device, which limited my ability to participate in decision-making and speaking for myself, since they did not value my words nor listen to what I said. Sadly, I was one of many who could not communicate autonomously and independently because of this unfortunate common denial. Even AAC systems do not have enough vocabulary, and I think it is correlated with this misconception about people who have AAC needs. My current language system's pre-programmed words are elementary school level, so I have to program or spell out most vocabulary I use in my daily life. It does not have some of simple words, such as create, which reinforces the notion that people with AAC needs are not as intellectual as everyone else, especially since they do not have the access to an enriched pre-programmed vocabulary on their AAC systems. Both Manassas and Sloan argued that those with differing abilities are seen as less in the culture, so it can be concluded that the belief of these people are seen as less is confirmed, which limits their ability to express themselves autonomously and independently by not giving an appropriate device and/or language program. The fourth pitfall is of how the support systems disempower individuals. Autonomy and independence is the support systems work and support these individuals' communicative abilities, but the support systems often take too much credit for these individuals' expressions in order to ensure their autonomy and independence. There is a boundary between the support systems giving these individuals a space to take responsibility for governing themselves and doing things independently, and the support systems thinking these individuals' autonomy and independence are due to the support systems' own work. I have observed that the support systems often overstep this boundary by taking too much credit for this population's autonomy and independence, as if it is the support system's complete responsibility, which conveys that these individuals' particular attributes are not fully theirs, but it implies rather the autonomy and independence are someone else's. Cultural perception implies that these individuals would be unsuccessful without their support systems, disregarding the fact that many are successful despite their support systems. This phenomenon creates and reinforces the notion that these individuals are not fully responsible for their autonomy and independence, even when individuals have worked significantly on living an autonomous and independent life. As an example, just yesterday, I had my autonomy taken away without my consent and in such a subtle, yet common, way, that the people involved probably did not even realize it. At the end of an appointment, which I attended by myself, when I returned to the waiting room to pick up my personal care attendant as I was ready to go home, the medical professional told my personal care attendant about a schedule change that I had already discussed with the professional. The professional told my attendant to make sure to tell my partner about the schedule change, as if I would not be able to do so. Despite not having ill intentions, this situation took away my ability to share my own personal information to the people I wanted to share it with and denied me the autonomy to choose to not share information with that personal care attendant if I had not wanted to share it. The support systems believe they have a right over individuals' autonomy and independence, and when the support systems take too much responsibility, this conveys that the work of these individuals is minimized and eventually disempowers their autonomy and independence. These individuals should hold themselves accountable and take complete ownership over their autonomy and independence while being grateful for the help from their support systems. I, however, want to thank people who support me. At any time I thank people publicly, like during a presentation, I inevitably hear from attendees that the person must have done so much work or worked so hard for me to succeed, whereas others are able to thank their partners, parents, teachers, and anyone else who supported them, without their listeners having those preconceived notions that I would otherwise be unsuccessful. So, I'll be as humble as I can be. The best optional outcome. The solution of how the support systems influence individuals with complex physical and communicative differing abilities is by empowering, supporting, and recognizing these individuals' communicative potential. The support systems who empower these individuals with their communicative abilities teach them how to communicate on their communication devices while expecting a level of growth of their communicative abilities, as well as encouraging them to communicate in everyday activities, as their cohorts without these differing abilities would. Manassas supported that people with these differing abilities should be expected to interact with their peers. In order to do that, I believe they need to view their communication device as their own actual voice, rather than expecting their communication devices to be something to practice just for speech therapy. Also, these types of support systems often expand individuals' vocabulary, which gives people a higher vocabulary to express themselves with autonomy and independence. All of these factors that I mentioned can lead to individuals expressing autonomy and independence. However, those with these complex differing abilities have the responsibility to govern themselves, as well as do or speak for themselves without unnecessary additional help from someone else. So, the support systems have to give them the tools to implement in order to communicate efficiently. One of the ways that my support systems helped me was when my mom, special education teacher, and speech language pathologist also had to work closely together as a team. My special education teacher and my speech language pathologist worked closely together, and my teacher integrated what I learned from my speech therapy into my curriculum. My teacher gave my weekly vocabulary to my speech therapist, which she programmed the words, and we worked on those vocabulary words in speech. So, I had double practice with my grade level vocabulary, as I practiced with my special education teacher and my speech language pathologist. By doing that, they supported me significantly with increasing my vocabulary on my speech device. Also, my mom was great at empowering and encouraging me to communicate through my communication device at home and in the community. Even though my mom understood my signs and gestures, she persuaded me to communicate on my speech device. She did not accept incomplete sentences and phrases because I was in 4th grade. My mom understood that saying complete sentences was totally appropriate intellectually and communicatively for me, so I can express myself effectively with full messages, even though saying a couple of words was easier and more time efficient. I first felt a little anxious to communicate on my device since I was not used to it, but I became more comfortable with it once I got more proficient on my speech device. Even when I felt uncomfortable communicating on my device, I've always understood that it is my voice, so I wanted to express myself on it. Many of my acquaintances and friends who have communication devices did not have support at home, which influenced them to not be able to communicate effectively on their devices, and it breaks my heart. So, I strongly believe that people with AAC systems must have great support at home and school to be successful at communicating on their AAC systems. Also, families and the school can and should work together as a team, which I noticed benefits the students significantly. Working together positively as a team, with the family's speech language pathologists, occupational therapists, educational staff, assistive technology support staff, and the student themselves, is the key to success with communicating on AAC, so everyone would be on the same page. But if everyone is not on the same page, there would not likely have consistency between home and school, which leads to roadblocks for the students' communication on their AAC systems. So, today we discussed what ableism is, the overview of the findings of my research on the autonomy, independence, and sense of self, the pitfalls of how the support systems influence these individuals with complex physical and communicative differing abilities, and its solution on how the support systems help those with these differing abilities. I am happy to say that I am starting donation-based small business, where I can do podcasts, blogs, and online courses to educate the public about how to support these individuals who have these differing abilities with autonomy, independence, and sense of self. You are more than welcome to connect with me on the social media and visit my website. I'd like to wish good luck to all of you by helping those who have AAC needs out with their communicative abilities. Mostly thank you so much for coming and listening to me. Now I'm opening up to you all to ask me questions. What questions do you have?
Thank you, Stephanie. That was wonderful. We do have a few questions for you. The first one has to do with ableism. And someone in the audience would like to know, how do you consider the concept of ableism and people who have significant intellectual differences or disabilities?
that art is better. Wonderful. Question. That is a wonderful question. Personally, I think a lot of people who have no S I G N significant D E V develop. That is a wonderful question. Personally, I think a lot of people who have significant developmental and slash or intellectual differing abilities E X P experience ableism 5 in so many ways. Personally, I think a lot of people who have significant developmental and slash or intellectual differing abilities experience ableism in so many ways. The world seeing sees these individuals as guide child childlike like people consider those who have Down syndrome. As kids, even when they are adults, and many of them are so smart, even though it is intellectual. D. I. Diagnosis. The world sees these individuals as childlike. Like people consider those who have Down syndrome as kids even when they are adults, and many of them are so smart even though it is an intellectual diagnosis. Another way that people with C O M P complex, intellectual, to and slash or D. E. Develop, developmental, differing abilities, is the another way that people with complex intellectual and slash for developmental differing abilities is the culture.
Stephanie, we have about 5 minutes left and we have a lot more questions. Do you feel up for one more question?
Yes.
Okay, I'm actually going to combine two questions because they're really about the same topic, and that's about core versus fringe vocabulary. One person wants to know how you feel about core versus fringe, and the other person is a little bit concerned about all the push for core words that are pre-programmed for and aren't enough for older elementary school and beyond. So I guess we kind of want to know your they want to know your thoughts about core versus fringe vocabulary on AAC devices.
That is an interesting question. Period. Personally, from my own lived no e x experience experiences. Personally, from my own lived experiences, I believe that the AAC no P R O F professional professionals are more focused focused. The black or white thinking to of C O R E core V S versus N O N none X C O R E core. I believe that the AAC professionals are more focused the black or white thinking of core versus non-core. Word.
Thank you, Stephanie. That
Word.
was very good insight from an AAC user, because I think a lot of us ask that question of ourselves. And that was, I think, really important information to come from an AAC user. So we are at 4:59 now. So we're coming to the conclusion. And on behalf of USSAAC, we'd like to extend our thanks to Stephanie for sharing her personal journey as an AAC user. This was wonderful information. Thank you all for participating this evening. Stephanie, we have a lot more questions for you, but we're going to email them to you if that's okay. And you can answer those. I have the email addresses. Is that okay with you if we email those to you and you can get back to them personally?
Yikes.
Okay. So thank you again for participating, everyone. Please complete the evaluation, which you can find on the AAC link. You will be receiving an email. And we are especially interested in suggestions for future webinars. And I will turn this over now to Franklin for a final message.
So thank you very much. First of all, I want to express, my name is Franklin Smith, Executive Director of AIESEC. On behalf of AIESEC International, a big thank you, of course, to our good friends at USAC and the Education Committee for coming up with yet another great speaker and another great topic. Thank you, Betsy, for a wonderful job moderating. And of course, Stephanie, you're an impressive presenter. And I was particularly impressed with being able to actually visualize on my end and see how you were responding to the questions that were being asked of you. That was absolutely fascinating. So thank you very much. It was great to be able to see that. And I wanted to say thank you, of course, to everyone who took the time to attend this evening. As a lot of you probably are aware, we've rescheduled our 2020 conference to next year, 2021. We're still calling it the 2020 conference in beautiful Cancun, Mexico. We're looking forward to being able to welcome everyone there. And again, on behalf of AIESEC International, we want to wish everyone a great rest of your evening, morning, afternoon, and please stay safe and be well, everyone. Thank you very much. Have a great evening, morning, rest of your day.